Well, it happened like a lot of things happen on the Facebook.
I had heard about it through social media.
This can cause a lot of damage quickly.
I saw someone posted it on their story, and it was more like, what's happening?
I had received the text multiple times from other teachers with similar alarm and concern and lots of questions. That's part of the plan with things like this, flooding false information, inflammatory information. The hope is that you'll get tired of fighting the fight.
That's unacceptable. It's unacceptable that you're doing your job, that you're doing something that's wholly right, and people come after you for it.
Before you knew it, it was everywhere. It was all that anyone was talking about.
I know the impact, the negative impact this can have on students to think, even for a moment, if somebody says, oh, your high school's the one that's grading by race, which is false.
The West Cook News article, spreading with lightning speed through the community, claimed Oak Park River Forest High School uses race-based grading and has separate criteria for Black and white students.
As a board member, I read the information, saw the information, and was startled and shocked by how we were being portrayed because it was not accurate. I also thought, how is this spread so quickly? And why would this become something that people would believe? Because it's just absolutely untrue.
It was offensive and harmful to me and my children and what I teach my children and how I raise my family. It didn't feel like anything that my school would implement, and certainly not something that my town, my village, would do.
The fake news article was published just after school let out for the summer.
So when I first found out about it, the first text came in, I felt angry. Very angry that this had happened, that this lie was out there. I also had to make a decision and spend some time thinking about next steps as the leader of the teachers union.
The teachers union, board members, parents, and administrators immediately began to put out the truth. OPRF was not instituting a race-based grading system and had no plans to. In part, a statement posted by the superintendent online said, simply, "This is not true."
And I did get questions about it. I had a number of people question me. Gina, is this what you all are doing? No, this is not what we're doing.
I contemplated sending out a communication, but to send out what had happened to 280 people who were on summer break, who definitely didn't all know, would give more airtime, more credibility almost to something that did not deserve that time. So I handled it on a case-by-case basis. I spoke to every person who contacted me.
According to Ethan Porter, a professor and disinformation expert from George Washington University, the OPRF community did everything they were supposed to.
People use misinformation to achieve political ends. They believe that misinformation can sway folks. And in the absence of accurate information, they're right. If people see false claims and those false claims go unaddressed and unchallenged, then yes, misinformation can move people. I think it's incumbent on all of us who care about an educated citizenry to confront people with the truth. The good news there is that people will respond to the truth by becoming more accurate and becoming more truthful in their beliefs. Because misinformation, at the very least, can be mitigated. Its harms can be lessened if we take action.
Addressing the concerns head-on was the exact right thing to do. All the students at OPRF received an email telling them this article was a fake.
All the talk was after the email had been sent, and it was basically just oh, it's not true, that's it. There wasn't much conversation to it, no one really believed it. I had a discussion about it with one of my classmates, but it was more about clearing up what even happened, so.
Even the legitimate news media was picking up on their message. Articles in the Chicago Tribune, the Associated Press, and PolitiFact, along with several other trustworthy news outlets, all called out the false claims from West Cook News.
It can be really hard to know what's misinformation and what's not misinformation, but there are several things you can do. People who are concerned about misinformation should rely on reliable sources. Turn to mainstream media outlets that have a track record of abiding by journalistic standards. Those standards involving a commitment to nonpartisanship, neutrality and objectivity. If I encounter something that seems really exciting, that seems really to correspond to my own political beliefs, the first thing I'll do is I'll see if a article in the New York Times, Washington Post, Associated Press, CNN confirms whatever it is I'm reading elsewhere. And if the answer is no, then I think there's good reason to wait before telling people all about the exciting rumor you've heard.
So who owns West Cook News, the online publication that put out the divisive, racist disinformation about OPRF?
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Dan Proft, a Chicago talk radio host and the co-owner of Local Government Information Services, which has 1,200 websites just like West Cook News in all 50 states. You know you've stumbled upon one if you spot this logo on the webpage, although not all of them have it. This is not new. It is a tactic that has been used for years: division through deception. In 2020, a New York Times investigation into LGIS found, quote, many of the stories are directed by political groups and corporate PR firms to promote a Republican candidate or a company or to smear their rivals. The article went on to say the network is rooted in deception, only a few dozen of the LGIS websites disclosing funding from advocacy groups. Proft isn't just spreading lies on the radio and online. He's also sending out printed newspapers to folks all across Illinois.
When we talk about the effects of mis and disinformation, we're also just talking about the effects of all kinds of information. And in a vacuum, people will respond to the information that they see. So if all I see is misinformation, then I will be more misinformed as a result. So if you find something that's really scintillating and exciting, but it's produced by some news organization you've never heard of, it's good to be suspicious.
It's important to also note Proft runs a political action committee called People Who Play by the Rules PAC. It's funded solely by Dick Uihlein, the billionaire shipping magnate who is also an anti-union political extremist and campaign megadonor.
People spread mis and disinformation for two purposes, primarily. First, they do so for pecuniary motives. They want to make more money. Misinformation can be really profitable. So that brings us to a more common reason to spread misinformation, which is that it gets people on your side, or so people believe. People target folks for misinformation campaigns based on their perceptions of who's a powerful political actor. So unions are targeted, teachers are targeted, of course, other politicians are targeted, political parties are targeted, racial, ethnic, and religious minorities are targeted. And to me, that suggests that not only is misinformation about perceptions of who's powerful, it's also about perceptions of who I can attack and denigrate, and in so doing, get more people on my side.
Dan Proft is directly connected to Awake Illinois. Awake calls itself a local grassroots parent organization, but that's not true. It's linked to national organizations like Parents Defending Education and Moms for Liberty, and is another arm of the disinformation campaign Proft is a part of. The Naperville woman who started Awake, Shannon Adcock, ran for school board and lost. Now she's running again, and also offering a playbook on Awake's website aimed at reclaiming school boards, and encourages candidates to acquire funding from the first ever national PAC targeting school boards, the 1776 Project, which was started by Trump's former budget director, the same administration that included Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, the billionaire from Michigan who was pushing to privatize public education through vouchers.
I think that school boards are a target because they're a pathway. They're a pathway to other positions. And I think that people are really starting to understand the importance of our school system and making sure that students have what they need and weaponizing it in the ways that they can for personal gain.
Another brazen attempt by an anti-union, anti-public education group to use disinformation to divide a united community.
So Oak Park has made a commitment. It's part of the reason why I live in Oak Park and why my mom moved us here, is because Oak Park has made a commitment to be an inclusive community, to ensure that there are equitable opportunities for all of our students and our families, and that we live together in a different way. And that makes us an easy target.
Oak Park represents progress. It represents people who are a community that is steeped in the work. a community that is committed to doing equity work, racial justice work, all the things that counter what they're doing.
And so I think for people who fear the difficult conversations about race, Oak Park's a good target. That if you could disrupt what's happening positively at Oak Park, it would be a win for people who don't want to see change.
The goal remains the same: politicize our public schools, privatize public education, and destroy our union. Their way in? The local school board.
You need to know who writes an article. You need to make yourself familiar with these organizations and these groups that are publicizing hateful and inflammatory materials that are non-factual.
It's not over. That's all. It's not over. This is marathon work. This is not, we're not in a sprint. And keep going. We can't stop now. Right? Misinformation and disinformation cannot prevent us from fighting and keeping going and advocating for what our students need, every single one of them. So keep going. If you're fearful and you're not willing to speak up and be on school boards or advocate in certain areas, if you remain afraid, then they win.